Hello and welcome to another episode of For Azeroth. My name is Manny, aka the True Manny, and I am joined once again by recruiter friend Sean. Sean, how has the World of Warcraft been treating you this week?
Manny, the World of Warcraft has been treating me quite well this week. I've had a pretty good week so far. It's Wednesday, so we're recording this after our weekly heroic clear, which we blasted, and then we went in and blasted normal as well, just for S's and G's.
Sand Lane and Goblins, got it.
Sandland and Goblins, yep.
Yeah, same thing with my team, just going through on normal, clearing through that. We've got some new recruits, so we wanted to get them some gear from that, get them sort of caught up. Jumped into heroic, went through half of that. Now we're up against the bosses that we have been progging again. Well, sorry, I'm not sure. Nexus Princess is really prog. She seemed to go down pretty easy. We ended up doing her first and then doing Brood Twister, because Brood Twister is so much more coordination, and that seems to be a point where my team seems to hit some struggles. So that's our current fight right now.
Those are good fights. Brood Twister caught some nerfs. Were they just to Mythic? We're going to talk about this in a second.
You know what? Why don't we jump right into it? I know it's sort of out of order, but yeah, we have seen some nerfs. So Brood Twister saw HP nerfs on a number of things. The biggest one that I think is fantastic, and I don't believe this is just from Mythic, the pests, the parasites, they can be stunned when they are actually trying to infest, so they don't have that invulnerability anymore. You still get that extra moment to like get off, because I used Cap Totem. There's a bit of delay when it goes off, and I've seen it just be like, oh no, and I just screwed up. So I'm super happy for that. The Mythic only nerfs also include the speed at which, the rate at which their speed increases, because for as long as they're out, every second they were getting a speed boost. Now it's every other second, so they're speeding up. They're speeding up way slower. It's going to be a much easier thing controlling those pests and everything. And then
half as fast. That's good.
Yeah. And with the HP nerfs, it's going to be a lot easier to handle things and kill Brood Twister. But a lot of those nerfs are Mythic only. We also saw some nerfs for Kaivessa, the Nexus Princess Kaivessa. Her execute having 25% damage taken out of it. Her dot also having damage taken off of it, including when you clear it. So it feels like it's going to be a lot easier on the healers, and this is, I think, in tandem with the nerfs that, or rather, some of it was bug fixes, but we'll call them nerfs that happened to Preservation Evoker. They no longer double dip in vitality for a couple of moves and stuff, so they aren't going to be as crazy outliers as they used to be.
Yeah, so now they'll just be approximately 15% ahead of every other healer based on the numbers. So that's good. That's good.
That's way better range. You know, they're bringing it in. They're giving other classes a chance.
There's actually a problem. I think Blizzard is hesitant to nerf Preservation Evokers because there's a lot of the fights in Mythic right now. They had like the last few fights that are only possible because you have double Preservation Evoker and how broken Preservation Evoker is right now. Like, I don't see, if you nerf Preservation Evoker and it doesn't also come alongside massive damage nerfs to Silken Court and to Ansarek, I don't see other teams being able to kill those two bosses without double Preservation Evoker. It is doing that much of the heavy lifting in the healing matter. Yeah, and Ovanax, that fight is being 3-healed right now, and it's being 3-healed because Preservation Evoker, 2 Preservation Evokers are able to basically carry it.
Up. Yeah. I think, though, they have to end up bringing Preservation Evokers in line, because there are teams that are going to be coming up now that aren't going to be switching their comps to tailor it for this sort of damage. This is just part of the typical. I want to say typical, but it's been that way for a while, where as the teams go through, as like various teams are coming up, they nerf the content so that it is doable for, as you said last week, mere mortals. And that is a big part of where we're at now with the race, because we have now completed the race to world first. At the time of this recording, we have 4 teams that have defeated Queen Anserac. And so, Sean, can you take us through this and what it took to bring down the Queen?
Yeah, this was an incredible race. One team went into the race just clearly playing ahead of everyone else, and that was Team Liquid. It was no surprise to anybody who watched any part of this race that Liquid came away with the victory on September 29th. I think that was Saturday. Saturday evening for them, Sunday morning for me. And they pulled that kill out, and they did a great job. Watching their analysts, there was a point on like Thursday or Friday even when people weren't sure that Anserac was killable in this reset because of the damage required to kill her. And Liquid's analysts went cooking, so to speak, and pulled out some incredible damage numbers. Like, they shifted cooldowns around. That's my actual favorite part of the race. I know a lot of people like watching the players perform, and that's great, but you can see those players perform at a super high level almost any time. Like, you watch any of their rating, any of their Mythic Plus that they do, but you only really get to see the analysts shine in that race to world first, where they're trying to squeeze out as much damage and as much healing as possible from the limits that they have. But they pulled the win. Echo came in second. They almost lost second. So everybody, it's been pretty solidly locked in. Liquid, Echo 1 and 2. Flip the order for the last little while. But sorry, my throat's dry. But Echo came close, or Method came close to stealing second place from Echo. Echo did not play with the usual consistency that we expect to see from them. Now, I say this, please understand, they're still miles and decades ahead of anything I or any of my friends or anybody else that I know could possibly imagine doing. They are among the best. I mean,
except for me. Like, if I rated 12 hours a day, I'd be there too. Didn't we say this last episode?
We did, yeah. If I just rated 12 hours a day, it's like coming in second on the race world first is like winning silver medal at the Olympics. You're still second best in the world. It's like, it's even like people are like, oh, you came 6th at the Olympics. Yeah, I'm only 6th best on the planet. I'm sorry. Anyway, they came second. Method pulled in third. They both did that on the 30th. And then on October 2nd, which is today, I think it happened last night.
About 9 hours ago from this recording, yeah.
Yeah, so 9 hours ago, Hot Pot Hero, Dwogo Hero, pulled it in for 4th. And it was really great to see them pump it out from the China realm, because that was not something we had been seeing, or we had expected to see. And they put on quite a show. There is potential that they could maybe fight for a 3rd place spot in the next race. We'll see. With that monetary incentive coming from China, maybe helping to push their drive a little bit.
Yeah, well, they didn't get it this time. So as per that deal, they throw more money on the pot until somebody from the Chinese realm gets world first. The incentive just keeps growing, and like, it is great to see that strong showing out of the region, because they just got back into the game with the launch of the War Within, that repairing that fence and getting the game back into the region. Mm-hmm. This is amazing. This is amazing that they were doing it. I kind of wonder if there were illicit ways for people to play in the region at some point. It just either way, I wouldn't be surprised. The fact that like they could jump to this level so quickly is actually not surprising for me. These guys, all these players play at such an amazing level. You're right. This is Olympic level plays, and it's not just being able to play that well. It's being able to play that well so consistently. You were talking about like, hey, Echo, they were a bit inconsistent, and they would get like that 20 something percent kill, and then they'd be wiping in phase one the next pull, and it'd be like, oh geez, this is not where we want to be. And like, I definitely agree with you, but the world first kill took 404 pulls attempts that they went in over the course of multiple days. Like we were saying, oh, they got to Anserac, the resets there. We'll give them like, let's say 2 to 3 days. And we were saying like Thursday, Friday. Yeah, it happened on Saturday. So you weren't really that far off, Sean, when you said Friday. But 404 pulls for that first one. Echo with 449 pulls. Method did it in less pulls, 425, and that's why you were saying, hey, like they almost lost it. Like the difference between world second and world third was a matter of hours, and it was actually inverted in the number of pulls it took to get to take down Anserac. There's a question of, hey, if Method had gotten a little bit of stronger showing when they were trying to do pulls earlier, if they hadn't had that like late night, if they hadn't had like the COVID that took out I think 5 players and caused them to isolate, this might have been a completely different game. So like there is a big question mark there about like, hey, what's going to happen next time? Because I think Method has definitely shown that it could jump into second, if not first place in the next one, if they can keep up the level of performance that they did here. So all of these teams, Olympic level performance, and it's great to see more teams in the competition, more players being showcased here, and people just hungry for that gold.
Yeah, I'm excited. More teams is better. It's exciting for the fans, exciting for us. I can't wait. And yeah, I mean, you said it, 404 polls. That's crazy. If you said that to a regular team, a 2-night a week guild, 404 polls, that's 3 months of polls. You get about an average of 25 polls a night, 20 to 30, polls a night, depending how fast they're going. Some a little faster if it's like a Tindril style fight. So 4 months of Prague for the rest of us. So Blizz, if you're listening, we're ready for those nerfs now.
Most definitely. I think when you get those, like with teams I've read at, when you even get close to triple digits, that's like this team might be disbanding territory. So it is a completely different mindset to dial in that hard to get these down.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, let's talk a little bit about Mythic Plus, because Keystones are continuing this week. We have a new affix here. The Voidbound is the next part of Xal'atath's bargains. Voidbound, the way that works is that when the group is in combat, Xal'atath periodically appears yet again, summons a Void Emissary, which immediately begins to empower enemies with this Dark Prayer ability. Okay, each Dark Prayer cast grants these surrounding enemies a damage reduction. You do less damage, but when you defeat the Void Emissary, it clears all of the stacks that were on the boss, on any of the characters that are around, and then all of the players get a 20-second buff that is a CDR cooldown reduction and increases your crit. This is the dream. As an enhancement shaman that is 100% about cooldowns, this is the dream for me. I'm going to have so much fun this week. I haven't had a chance because we were recording really early. Last night was raid night, and I didn't get to play as much, but I am so excited for this week. I also love that the punishment is yet again, it takes longer to kill the enemies. So everybody, hard switch, do the mechanic, kill this thing.
Yeah, hopefully. On the beta, we noticed that shamans were able to purge the mechanic. They were able to purge the shield and essentially one-shot the ad. I haven't run with a shaman yet this week, but I have spoken to some friends who I told them about this, and they said the shamans that they played with were unable to do that. So I don't know if it was removed or not, but if you're a shaman, I definitely recommend at least trying Purge the Xalatath shield at least once.
Yeah.
Because if that's the case, just one more reason to stack those shamans in the sub 12, the 11 and below range. +2 to +11 is double shaman territory all day long, every day.
I mean, you can also bring in those demon hunters. They have the offensive purge too.
So
if
I
that
did
works.
run with a demon hunter. They were not able to consume magic.
Okay, as a warrior, can you shattering throw to do extra damage to that shield?
Yeah, if I talent into shattering throw, which
I have to talent to purge. Come on, man. This is
no,
like we're looking at options here.
yeah, that's not gonna.
That's not gonna happen. All right, okay, we'll check. I have to like come back. Maybe I'll do an editing note before we put this up to say definitively, editing Manny, this is your point right here.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, good call. That's a good idea. We'll go back in and say, hey, turns out you can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we're back to tyrannical at 4, at 10 fortified. Obviously, once you get past 12, the void bound disappears and you're dealing with guile. We have had some teams that have been pushing a lot higher now, but with those higher keys is where the stress is coming from. And so we've seen additional nerfs to some of the more challenging dungeons, because at this point in the season, there are some dungeons that are clearly easier than others, and some dungeons that are much harder. Like, as much as Sean, you and I had like a bit of a clown show in Mist this weekend, I think Mist is strangely one of the easiest of the dungeons available. It just feels like you just go forward. There's not much that's gonna screw you over in that. But on the flip side, Grim Batol, Siege of Borealis, and Stone Vault all got nerfs, and I think are very needed nerfs for those dungeons.
Yeah. It's crazy how much easier Mists is. Like, there's a graph put up by Lo-Fi Banshee on Twitter, and they like track keys that have been done, and Mists is there's been more Mists done timed. They're more than double the amount of any other key.
I don't want everything nerfed to Mist level. I think maybe they actually need to bump up the difficulty in Mists. And Arakara, I think, is another one that's kind of easy.
I agree. Arakara is also easy. The City of Echoes is a little bit easy. I'm okay with easy because it's infinitely scaling content. Let it be easy in those low key levels so that people who just want to get their keys for the week done, get them done and get out without hating their lives, and let the difficulty ramp up for the people who want the difficulty at the higher key levels. I don't think there's any problem with keystones from 2 to 10 or 2 to 11 being, timeable with a wipe. If you have a full party, I actually think they should be timeable. I think from 2 to 11, every key should be timeable with one full party wipe included.
I agree with you. I think that that's always, of course, relative to gear. Like, the more gear you have, obviously, the easier you're able to make up for a wipe. And therefore, as you get higher, gear can compensate for less, and so that's automatically something that occurs. But I meant in terms of difficulty relative to other dungeons. I dislike when there is a dungeon that is
case, make
so
the rest
much
of them easier. Get them down. I don't want. Listen. I don't. There's some I don't run because I just don't want the headache. I queue up to do my 8-10s for the week, and I usually pug those by myself. I log in the afternoon or in the morning, and I just jump into pugs. I do 8-10s. It was Black or Cold in season 3 of Dragonflight because it was the one that was the most likely to be completed with pugs. It's Mist of Tyrna Scythe in this one. I ran 8 myths last week. And then I do other keys on the side with my groups. So my Mythic Plus group or my raid friends, my raid team friends. Either of those, I'll do whatever dungeons we have. We're farming trinkets and stuff. We're doing all of those. But if I'm looking to fill my vault and complete my week, I want it to be easy. I'm running those mists every time. Every time. I know I'm going to run 10s of City of Threads, Grim Batal, these other ones that are a little bit harder. I know I'm going to run them. I still pug 8 mists out because I want to incentivize. I speak with my money, so to speak. And instead of money, in this case, it's my time. I'm letting them know, hey, this difficulty of mists, I enjoy this. I'm doing it a lot. More of this, please.
Okay. I mean, like, I think that's always going to be the case, that players are going to go towards the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Like from the dawn of Mythic Plus, everybody running Maw a million times because it was just fast, easy, and that. So it's always going to be the case. I just think that if they have a target difficulty that they want, and 7 out of 8 dungeons are hitting that, and there's one that just is a little bit low, I don't say screw your target difficulty and bring them all down to that lower thing. I say bring the outliers into range, both the high and the low. I know players typically are not going to like that because it's like, oh, you made my 8 runs a week harder. And so I get what you come from.
If they bring the hard ones down,
yes,
I'm okay with them bringing mists up. But Manny, I don't have the same faith that you do that that's what will happen. I think we'll see mists timer. I think what'll happen is we'll see the timer in mists decreased. You'll have less time to complete it because it's so easy to complete. So they'll just shorten the timer that you have in there, which I'm okay with. I'm already going fast. I don't mind if I have to go faster. But I don't think the same adjustments are going to happen on those ones that are like City of Threads right now. The twins boss, if you're not in a group that's coordinated and knows the fight and is in voice comms, you're not finishing that dungeon on anything above a 7.
I gotta say that is something that they really need to address. It's not how hard things hit. It's not the bad overlaps. Like, they're already addressing that. If you guys look at our show notes, we've got all the adjustments that they made. A lot of it is bad overlaps, random mobs that like run out and like can screw you over because they've run into a pack and pull over a pack that you didn't want. That sort of stuff they're already on top of. But those levels of coordination that create the pug stompers, I think that's what they need to start looking at now. And I think that they also need to think about that because in combination with the affix that we had last week, you could have some really bad overlaps where it's like, hey, I got to run out of this, but now all of the orbs are coming from that direction. What do I do? And I just think they need to adjust timings and so forth so that the coordination doesn't need to be that meticulous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some bad overlaps. There's some that somehow got introduced in Dawnbreaker. Dawnbreaker is a very easy key to complete. If you're looking to complete Dawnbreaker, run, like you're looking for a good key to complete, run it. I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up being the first plus 10, like the first portal you get from War Within. I wouldn't be shocked if it was Dawnbreaker. I think City of Echoes also maybe, but Dawnbreaker is super, super accessible right now. But there is the second boss. There's some weird overlaps that somehow did not exist last week that exist this week, where they're doing orbs on top of Tank Buster and AoE on top of orbs, which didn't exist last week. And like, if it's just the Tank Buster, my health bar doesn't move. My health bar literally stays at 100%. But this week it was Tank Buster plus the orb, and it one-shot me. Well, I guess 2 shot because it was 2 abilities, but and it was completely out of nowhere. Like, we have no idea how it happened. So there's adjustments that were made that it's like, oh, did you make this worse in the other direction? Maybe, I don't know what happened. But yeah, hot tip for Dawnbreaker: if you're a Dawnbreaker fan, you're somebody who enjoys Dawnbreaker, run it in slow flight. Turn off. I beg you. I beg you. I beg you. I beg you. For anybody who's pugging Dawnbreaker or running it with a regular group, turn off skywriting and use boomer flight. It gives you more precise landing, and you don't need the zoomer flight to get to the end safe location. You can just fly there, straight there from the ship. So when the first boss is doing her explosion at the end at 0.1%, she starts her explosion mechanic. As soon as that cast starts, everybody leaves the ship, fly right inside the church, because you get down into the town before the mobs spawn. So you're standing on the spawn location of the first lieutenant when it spawns. You can pull it right there. You don't need to be on the ship when it dies. It dies anyway. It casts that spell, it dies. And then from there, you want to have slow flight on so that when you're landing on spots, you can hover above it, wait for everybody to get there, and then land straight down. Instead of having people dive bombing in at an angle and pulling a bunch of packs from the side and being like, oh, well, I couldn't land straight. Like, just slow flight. Everybody should just slow flight. I'm at the point now where I will not run it. I'm telling everybody before I put the key in, slow flight. And then on the last boss, you just get off the ship and you fly direct, straight line to the spot where you end. You have plenty of time. I land and I can just wait for Rashinon to land. Anyway,
so was that this week's Just a Tip?
That was this week's Just a Tip. Yeah, there was like 3 Just a Tips in there. So
there you go.
Yeah,
perfect. In terms of the meta that has been forming in the keys, it's mostly a continuation of last week, both in good and bad. The highest keys that we have seen completed as of this recording has been a 14, Arakara, no less. We've seen 13s, a ton of 13s over a number of different dungeons, so that's been good. The representation for tanks, still quite healthy. We've got 3 tanks with over 20% representation. We've got the Blood DKs, 26.4 is the highest percentile. We've got Warriors, 25.7, really close there. Druids, 20.6, a little bit behind, but both the Arakara and a number of high keys have been completed with Guardian Druid, so they are no slouches whatsoever. Then on the other half, the lower representation, we've got VDH, the Vengeance Demon Hunters. They're at 15.5%. Brewmaster Monks, I'm really sorry, 7% on the dot. And Protection Pallies, ouch, 4.8% on Protection Pallies. And I really think that it is the fact that Paladins are still like very much tied to that concentration, that if they don't have up the defensives, they just start getting trucked. It's I'm not sure if they need some sort of adjustment, but the last time Paladins got a rework or something, it was nightmare fuel for the rest of us. So I'm not entirely against a little bit lower of representation right now for Protection Paladins. What do you think about this?
I think it's great. Tank parity is good. People should be able to play what they want at the levels they want. Again, as we get to those higher levels, you're going to see a gap start to exist. But the longer you can delay that gap happening, the better. I'm okay with there being like, you know, a locked in meta where it's like only this specific comp can complete the keys at this level, as long as that's only 1 or 2 key levels above what everybody else can complete. 1 preferably, I can accept 2. But when and in most cases that is how it is. It's just we get so focused and locked in on, what's the best comp? We're only running the best comp for every level from 2 up.
That trickle down effect is what really affects these numbers more than what's actually viable at those high keys.
Yeah, human perception, people not understanding how, the game works or how any of it works, really. It's like, it'd be like if you watch the NFL and saw the Chiefs win a Super Bowl and think to yourself, well, we're only going to win if we have a tight end who's dating a pop star and a quarterback who's Patrick Mahomes. So we got to cut all our Tom Brady's. We got to cut all our Jared Goffs. We got to cut all our Matthew Staffords. All these people got to go. Sam Laporta, you're out of here. And it's like, it worked for them this season, but it's okay. Like, you can still get this done with, your Jaden Daniels. Sorry, I watch a lot of football.
That's okay. All of these names are French to me. It's just sort of like, I think I recognize that name. I think I've heard that name before. This is what happens, like when I show my show my girlfriend. I'm just like, hey, listen to this show. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm like, no. I just need the general flow is what I'm trying to get you to understand. It's like, yes, you guys sound enthusiastic. I don't know what you're saying.
I love it.
Oh, okay. The flip side of that, of course, is there is a huge differentiation with healers. Resto Shaman, as bad as it was before, is pretty much cemented itself with over half the keys, 54.2% of keys, and this is at keys 10 and above, right? The next highest is Priest, combined, Holy and Discipline at 14.5%. Holy Pally at 11, Preservation Evokers at 8.9, Mist Weaving 5.9, Resto Druids at 5.5. So I want to say that if you throw Resto Shamans out of the out of that picture, the other ones are really close together. Like there's pretty even representation outside of that just disproportionate lion share that Resto Shaman has. And if you guys want to know our thoughts of like why Resto Shaman is just absolutely killing it for healers, do check out our previous episode. We did go into that, and we actually had a little bit of help from Spencer as well, who gave their point of view.
Yeah. Again, parity is good. We want to see that 1 to 2 key levels. I think it's still too early in the season. People's gear is still behind. So you have 1 or 2 groups which are skewing the data. You know, you've got if you've got, let's say there's 15 people, so 3 groups worth of people that are pushing those high-end keys right now. Well, most of them are playing 1, maybe 2 characters, and that's it. So those numbers are going to lean towards the characters that they decided they were going to play. And that affects it a little bit. So don't get too locked in just now. I think it'll be interesting to look a month from now and see where things are at. We're seeing some Boomkin buffs, which will, I think, remove Guardian Druid from the equation and maybe put Vengeance back in. Boomkin's looking really good in a lot of Mythic Plus dungeons. Ultimately, you're going to have a Druid in that the top group. The top groups are going to have a Druid no matter what. You want the versatility buff. If you are bringing DPS that benefit heavily from Mastery, then you're going to have a Shaman because you want Sky Fury Totem. And that locks in 2 spots. So Resto Shaman, and then your Druid is going to be maybe a Boomkin or maybe Guardian Druid if Boomkin's not doing well. And if Boomkin is doing well, then you're going to be looking at, okay, let's buff that damage with a Vengeance Demon Hunter. It also brings Sigil of Silence still, which is still good, even after the nerfs. So I'm interested in looking at a month. Let's look at it in a month and see where things are. And then that's when we can start to, I think, officially crown what the season 1 meta is. But I want to point out, this is not a new position for Resto Shaman. Resto Shaman was the meta in season 1, or not the meta, but they were the most played healer in season 1 of Dragonflight as well.
I honestly think when I look at Dragonflight and how the meta shaped up, it was really about the the damage. We got into a point in later seasons where what was really challenging stuff was how quickly you would get one shot, right? And what people did to compensate for that was bring in Augvokers. They would allow tanks to be a little bit hardier and be able to get through stuff. And on top of, you know, boosting everybody else with the extra damage. Guardians were just insane about being able to just have infinite rage, so they were doing so well. When they removed that, came in other tanks that were just able to survive but bring high amounts of damage there. And unfortunately, and it's still true to this day, Resto Shaman doesn't bring much damage. What's propping Resto Shaman up, in my opinion, is the fact that it's able to bring the utility and the extra health, so that these teams that are going in early aren't So like hurt and one shot. When I look at the way things are set up with this, with like these teams that are pushing, we're seeing Frosty Ks in there, right? We're seeing some unholy DKs when there's not Frost. We're seeing Augvokers back again. We're seeing Arcane Mages, right? Guardian Druids and Protection Paladins and of course we talked about having Blood DK being highly represented. They're covering off like the Battle Res, the Bloodlust, and once you have that covered, you start seeing that shift. When you don't have the Resto Shaman and some of these high keys, that's when I start seeing Elementals and Enhance come in to cover that utility, right? As well as bring in the Bloodlust. When you have a Guardian Druid in there, right, you're less likely to see the BDK. I've seen rogues show up and such because, hey, now we don't need that battle res. Though I always find that like it seems scary to have a battle res on your tank. You recently experienced like how much it takes out of DK to do that battle res.
Yeah,
it's a similar situation when you're on a tank, especially now with Blood DK not stacking haste as we were talking about over the weekend. Their resource generation isn't as instantaneous. Losing all of that to do the battle res, yikes.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah. So I definitely want to see how it develops, where it crystallizes. I just think it's kind of cool to see how things are. And I think it's actually going to be very interesting because now that we are past the race to world first, this is when Blizzard really starts coming back in with those class adjustments. And like you said, like we're going to see things change drastically from here. Any thoughts on like what you think is probably going to get hit with the nerf bat?
I'd like to see. I mean, we talked about it with dungeons, but I'd like to see it happen with classes as well. I'd like to see Preservation Evoker brought down, Resto Druid brought up. The healers in between those two are all pretty well marked, like pretty well lined up for parity for healing done. But Preservation Evoker is way ahead, and Resto Druid is way behind, which is ironic because coming out of the beta, they gave it some nerfs. Resto Druid got nerfed a bit, and since then it's been rebuffed for a total of like 12% total overall healing. It's still so far behind. I don't know. I sometimes wonder who's in charge of, like, who looked at it on the beta and said this definitely needs to be nerfed. To be at the point that it's still 12%, and then like have it release and give it a 12% overall buff and still have it be so far behind, is sort of wild to me. So I think you'll see those. I do think you'll see some adjustment in that way. I don't think they know how to buff Resto Druid or what is wrong with. I don't know. It'll probably, hopefully it's not just another aura buff. I hate those, but who knows? I would like to see, for a DPS standpoint, they actually did Fury really dirty. They tuned Fury Warrior based off of normal and heroic raid and heroic dungeons damage. Which is unfair because they looked really good because all of their damage was instant burst. But as soon as you get to a situation where any of these mobs are living longer than the 15 seconds of that burst window, they fall off completely. So if you look at the damage profile now of Fury, they're below the halfway point for AoE cleave damage. So they're midpoint for the thing they're supposed to be best at. They're below half. And for single target, they're second from the bottom. So what is their niche? What are they here for? Like, it was the early tuning on it was necessary, but they tuned it. They nerfed it 3 posts in a row. 3 different things happened, and it was too much. If the cooldowns for Fury didn't happen to line up so exceptionally well on Ansarek, I don't think you would see it played much at all anymore. And then Warcraft logs on Rashinon, a fight that has ads that need to die. They are extremely dangerous ads. Decided not to count the ad damage in logs. So Fury Warrior, if you clear Rashinon on any difficulty, but mostly talking Mythic, and you look at the details meter at the end of the fight, your Fury Warrior is at the top. and you survived the fight because they killed the ads. If you look at it on Warcraft logs, they'll be the bottom. So warriors are swapping to arms and no longer killing the ads. And
teams are struggling because they're not doing it.
Kill it.
That is so bizarre. And
yeah.
Okay, there are two games that happen when you are raiding. There is the beat the boss, the play the mechanics game that exists in World of Warcraft, right. And there's this other secondary game layered on top, which is I need to get that legendary parse. But
it's not just that. It's teams base their roster on the damage they see in Warcraft logs.
Yes,
so who are we taking to the boss? Who's at the highest damage? Okay, well, our warriors are at the bottom, but we're not taking them.
Yeah, but I think that's not the game that you're actually playing in order to beat the boss. That is a secondary thing that has like been overlaid, which had value, but like when they make those decisions to say like, okay, we're counting any ad damage as padding and therefore not included in the logs, and it warps the perception. Like, you could have teams that are literally working to their own detriment because they're misappropriating the logs. It's like recently there was a post about like how the damage from evokers isn't being properly attributed, and that you need to like look at this to see what the evoker damage is. And that to me is just like, it happens from time to time, but like you've got to be on top of that, because you could have a evoker that's doing amazing damage, wing commander destroying, but because your add-on isn't quite reporting it right, you bench them, and then you wonder why you're taking X amount of extra kills to like get back to where you were last week. That is so weird for me.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. So anyway, to fully answer that question, I'd like to see Prez brought down a little bit, Druid brought up a little bit. For DPS, I'd like to see Fury given back some of its identity, return some of its, or just revert some of the nerfs that had happened to their AoE ability. I don't care if you make them strong a single target. Warrior has arms for that, but give Fury, give them a identity. They don't have one right now, and people are abandoning it because of it. And I also would like to see Shadow Priest get a buff. Shadow Priest is in a rough spot, so they could use a buff. And I guess the issue that we run into with Shadow Priest is it's hard to buff it for raid without making it broken in Mythic Plus. So it's like, what do we do here? And BM Hunter's the reverse. It's hard to buff them for Mythic Plus without making them broken in raid. Anyway, Shadow Priest needs to be fixed somehow. Do something. And then my big fear, my concern is coming to fruition. They are probably going to nerf Prot Warrior, because all the streamers are playing it, Manny. They listened to me. They said, oh, Sean's right. This is a lot of fun. This rage generation is crazy. I'm basically invincible. I love it. Let's push with it now. And Prot, I mean, I meme a lot on this show, but Prot does not need a nerf. Prot feels comfortable. All of the other tanks will feel similar as they get gear. Prot just happens to be less reliant on gear. Prot is not broken. They're not like a head and shoulders above, and they won't be the meta comp tank. They'll be the most fun tank. You might see them in the MDI, but not the TGP. But I'm worried that Prot's going to catch a perception nerf because so many people are playing it and saying how much fun it is and how great it is. That's my fear.
I don't want to contradict you because you are the guy who knows Prot, but I have been looking at Prot and I have been seeing all of the damage that is coming out of Mythic Plus. That is just the white swings, the auto attacks, right? That is fairly heavy in Mythic Plus, and as you get higher in those keys, right, it's going to become worse and worse. And Protection Warrior is the tank for physical damage. And so like I understand sometimes it's perception, but I also think that like right now the way damage numbers are coming in Mythic Plus, unless they're willing to like back out of like a million mobs came at you and white swinged, which is kind of the issue that some of these tanks that need to build up stuff before they can really smooth out damage or dealing with, like I think that they have to be worked in and evolved. The ones that are squishy on pull.
More to Mythic Plus than can my tank survive these hits? It's what group utility do they bring? What kind of damage are they doing? How much damage are they doing? That kind of stuff. And it's just brings nothing else other than, hey, I can tank a lot of mobs really well. And if you take that away from them, you're going to run into the same thing you had with Fury. What's the class identity then? If you remove that, right? Their class identity is, hey, I can get punched in the face a lot.
I mean, that is the quintessential tank identity, and they do the sword and board better than others in that way. But that's really good. Okay, guys, we are going to move into a interview that we recorded with Lithy. You're going to see that coming right up. But before we do, I want to take the time to thank all of you who have been leaving us a review on iTunes or the Bonus Roll production directory. It is the best way to help us in a non-monetary fashion. It helps us reach new listeners, and we thank you for all the support that you give in that way. And thank you guys